because it's much easier to do it letting the nominal exchange rate go up than having to bring down the prices of the non-tradables. Interest rates went down in many countries. Before, remember that the reaction to a typical crisis was to increase the interest rate, and also central banks provided ample liquidity to the private sector through special credit lines. And then also countries eased fiscal policy. In all these countries there was no fiscal contraction as before. So here is the data for the average, and you see that for the average country, like there was something like a fiscal stimulus. I don't want to use that word, but an increase in the deficit. So what's different this time? I'm going to repeat myself again. Different initial conditions, I want to stress this. Better currency management and current account and fiscal surpluses. That allowed governments to react different from the past, with exchange rate flexibility, expansionary monetary policy, and expansionary fiscal policy. Now, it's not clear that the expansionary monetary and fiscal policy has an effect on GDP. There is no strong empirical or evidence, neither strong theory to suggest that that works. But what happens is that we didn't have the mess because we had better initial conditions. So here it's interesting to compare the performance of Latin America with emerging Europe. And we heard before that Europe was doing very badly. Here you have a graph with the change in the current account balance between 2008 and 2009 and the GDP growth. So you see that there is very strong negative correlation, and that's essentially the economics of the sudden stop that now happened in emerging Europe and not in Latin America. Now, recovery is on the way. Commodity prices are coming back. The financial shock is also going away. MB spreads are falling. There are new issuance of debt for Latin American countries. So what's ahead? There might be risks in the international economy because of the large fiscal imbalances in the G7 countries that might be met by an increase in global savings, or they might not, and in that case probably interest rates have to go up to induce people to lend to these governments. And if that happens, Latin American countries can be in trouble again. And because of this type of risks, I think that one of the lessons learned is that Latin American countries should be careful and return to having at least small fiscal surpluses to avoid possible future sudden stops. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Andy, very much indeed. It was fascinating. Lots of interesting things to discuss, I think. But let me turn to the final speaker, Yunchul Park, who I think many people know already, a distinguished professor in the Division of International Studies at Korea University. He previously served as the Chief Economic Advisor to the President of Korea, as President of the Korea Development Institute and President of the Korea Institute of Finance. So you've been a president many times over, and we look forward very much to what you have to say, Yunchul.
Not the most important one. Okay, thank you very much. I'm very privileged to be here. to participate in this conference. What I'm going to do is to discuss the preliminary results of a study I participate. That is the impact of the crisis on East Asia, the causes and the consequences of the crisis. Well, as you all know that the most of East Asian economies, and by East Asia I mean certain countries belonging to ASEAN plus 3, ASEAN 10 countries, and China, Japan, and Korea, CJK countries. And except for China, all of the countries suffered a great deal in terms of output losses and the market turbulences. The crisis, the global economic crisis or financial crisis, has been very contagious, and this crisis contagion through most of the East Asian countries into deeper recession through basically two channels, trade channels, which has been a very dominant one. In fact, until the second quarter of 2009, the exports of all these countries, including China, were plunging at the double-digit rates, and so were imports falling at the same rate, even higher rate, thereby producing substantial what is known as recession surplus. And then the financial market channel, which was secondary, but then to some countries like Korea, was a very important channel in the sense that the contagion through the financial market deepened the crisis and, in fact, pushed the country to the verge of the national insolvency at one point during the fourth quarter of 2008. Now, what is the channel, the financial channel? Well, it begins with the contraction of global financial intermediation, and which leads to dollar liquidity shortages, and then that creates deeper recession through the cut in the trade credit and other the loans these countries obtained from international financial markets. And as a result of these, basically the shortage of the dollar or reserve currency liquidity, the asset prices have nosedived and many currencies have weakened vis-a-vis the dollar. Now, this was the story up until the second quarter of 2009. Since then, according to this, the important the weekly magazine known as The Economist, says that there has been an astounding recovery taking place in East Asia. Now, the question is, can it be sustained, and whether can the East Asia can become a regional engine to pull the global economy out of the messy situation. This is what I'm going to try to answer. Now, the first question we should ask is whether the ongoing recovery, and depending upon how you look at it, can be very strong, or it can be rather normal, one you would expect after a crisis, is internal demand driven or external demand driven recovery. And this is very important from our perspectives. And I don't have many pieces of evidence, but then a very crude, the gross decomposition exercise suggests that, surprisingly, the most of the East Asian economies, perhaps excluding the China, have relied more on external demand than internal demand. And that has come to me as a surprise, and I'm trying to rely on more sophisticated econometric analysis to find out whether the result can stand the scrutiny of my fellow economists. But then there is another piece of evidence, that is all of these the East Asian countries have been running huge current account surplus as a percentage of the GDP. In the case of Korea, for instance, last year, in 2009, the current account recorded $46 billion in 1 year, pushing up the size of the reserve to almost $300 billion.